morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good
Good
morning to
morning.
you. The topic for today's is yet another Indo-Pak War, which was fought in 1971. This war is in a way different from the previous wars because India was forced under the circumstances within their country to take the initiative. So in this case, initiative for the war was by India. Now, before going to detail, I'll give you a little eye view, bird's eye view, so that you have a picture while we're going into details. Now, the genesis of this war lies in the national elections that were held in Pakistan in 1970 in both the wings. Now, the follow-up of this election led to chaos in the country. Basically, at the eastern wing, we got to know the East Pakistan. The result was that the war started with a preemptive strike from Pakistan to Indian air bases on 3rd December. And India responded with a big gusto heavily on Pakistan. And you know what happened. And then the war lasted just mere 13 days. Why 13 days? There is a reason. I'll explain to you as you go down the line because India had to fight against time in this war. And on 16 December 71, General Niazi signed the instrument of surrender. After he signed the instrument of surrender, 93,000 prisoners of war were taken by India. They were mostly belonged to Western Pakistan, that means Punjabis and Baloch and all those. And the biggest significance of this war was that a new country was carved out of Pakistan. With this background, I will go into more details now. As I mentioned, the origin lies of this war and the genesis of the election which were held in Pakistan in 1970. What happened after the election is very significant. East Pakistan leader, Army League leader Sheikh Mujibur Rahman won a thumping majority. He won 167 seats out of 169 in East Pakistan. And against the National Parliament, he won the same 167 against a total of 313 seats. So here is a situation where Mujibur Rahman has a majority, absolute majority in East Pakistan, and simple majority overall at 313 parliament seat, and he had 167. So he rightfully projected his claim to form a national government. This was not liked by the West people. It was not liked by Bhutto in particular. It was not liked by Punjabis in particular. Or should I say mostly, they could not swallow a fact that a Bengali government of East Pakistan going to rule the entire nation, both East and West. The situation gradually began to go out of hand. There was a reaction, and through the reaction, the government acted viciously. Finally, Yahya Khan gave orders to the military that go ahead and suppress the chaos that is taking place. People who are reacting to this, please subdue it somehow. But army, as usual, went overboard, gradually went overboard, and it led to murder, rape, arrest. In a way, it led to genocide of people of East Pakistan. Not only that, 10 million Bengalis of East Pakistan fled to India. That was the situation which was obtained at that time. Government of India, Indira Gandhi, tried her level best to tell the world. She pleaded with the world to look at the situation and do something about it. But both the UNO and the world at large did not come up to expectation. Finally, Prime Minister on 27th March 71 declared support for struggle for independence of East Pakistan. Here is a major statement by Prime Minister that we will not support East Pakistan for independence. By November 71, the war seemed inevitable. India was getting ready. India started deploying its troops along the Indo-East Pakistan border. India is now only waiting for environment or weather rather to change to the way Indian Army wanted. That is, the rains should have stopped because that part of Pakistan, now Bangladesh, crisscrosses hundreds of rivers and rivulets. And it's extremely difficult for any army to fight war in such a land. So Manik Shah decided we will wait, ready, ready to strike, but we will wait for rain to stop, dry weather to set in. Not only that, he said we will wait for northern Himalayan passes to get blocked with snow so that no fear of interference from the Chinese side in support of Pakistan. So India was ready to strike, but waiting for an opportunity, an excuse, which fortunately for India was provided by Pakistan itself. Pakistan felt India is interfering too much, almost the verge of war. Pakistan Air Force went ahead and carried out a preemptive strike on 11 Indian Air Force bases at 5:40 p.m. on 3rd December 71. Here the war starts now. After this, Pakistan Air Force struck in the evening at 5:45 on 3rd December. Prime Minister declared this as an act of war. So we have excuse now. Pakistan started, it's an act of war, we told the world, and then the Indian Armed Forces moved in. India responded full scale war by land, by sea, and by air. What was India's aim? Aim in the West was to carry out no major offensive operations, to carry out only holding operations. But on eastern side, East Bengal or East Pakistan, India's aim was to carry out such a heavy offensive that we are in a position to liberate that part. So the objective become liberation of East Pakistan, a very major objective, very major aim with worldwide implications. And gentlemen, it has tremendous strategic implication. You're creating another country to our advantage. we were at tremendous disadvantage with Pakistan being on the east and on the west. So with this, the country was broken into two parts. We Indian armed forces kept a very heavy pressure on Pakistan, and soon we realized that they are not in a position to fight the war to any length, to any duration. They went on defensive. Within days, Pakistan armed forces went on defensive, particularly the Air Force, and very little resistance was offered. We noticed when Pakistan aircraft came to Indian airfield to carry out bombing, they just ran through without being serious in delivering weapon system. There was a reason for this. One was that Pakistan was running out of resources right at the beginning of the war, and High Command had issued instructions to the Air Force to prevent losses. So the aim became prevent losses and not go ahead in the offensive and fight with India. Second reason was a large number of Bengalis who were the airmen and who were the technicians who were maintaining these aircraft, rectifying defects, etc. They were not available. So they were short of resources, they were short of qualified manpower who could do the job. In fact, it was impression in India that it was the Pakistan army that was behind the entire 71 fiasco that took place with the election. Pakistan Air Force did not have its heart in the war, and therefore such instruction to hold on, to not prevent losses, all this came in. You can understand when Pakistan Air Force made requests to foreign countries for help. Pakistan obtained fighters from Jordan, F-104. From Libya, they got Mirages. From Saudi Arabia, they got 106, 86, F-86. So such a short war, within days they ran out, and they borrowed or they request these foreign countries to give them the support. In the east, Pakistan Air Force in the east, quite right, Pakistan Air Force was totally destroyed. Dhaka airfield was totally damaged, was made unusable, and was captured by the Indian Armed Forces. The pressure on Pakistan was kept throughout. Hunter aircraft taking off from Jamnagar went and struck Karachi as part of offensive this side and set all oil tankers which are normally on the ports set on fire. As for the naval operation concerned, Indian Navy went in to both Bay of Bengal and Saudi Arabia, what I'm saying, Arabian Sea. First, Navy attacked Karachi Harbour, also on 4th, 5th December. Hunters attacked earlier, and now the Navy attacked it. It's a very daring attack by Indian Navy on Karachi Harbour. You'll be surprised to know they use boats. Indian Navy use missile boats. These are small boats which carry missile for short range offensive, not meant for high seas. But Navy took on itself a daring attack, set course from Bombay side, at midnight in these small missile boats and went all the way down to Karachi at midnight and came to close ranges and launched their missiles. Tremendous damage was done to the harbour. Pakistan was totally surprised that such a thing has been done. They did not anticipate anything. The result of this missile boat attack, a daring attack as I said, Pakistan lost a large number of ships, not only the military ships, but they lost civil commercial ships and they lost large manpower. As far as Pakistan Navy on the Western Front was concerned, it was its end. Pakistan Navy was no more effective. In fact, it was totally crippled and made unfit for participation in war. On the eastern sector, something very interesting happened. Indian Navy, to isolate the Pakistan Navy in the eastern side, carried out a blockade of Bay of Bengal to isolate the Pakistan Navy. So Pakistan Navy couldn't come out of the harbor. To add to this, Indian Navy sent His Highness Vikrant to Bay of Bengal, from which it launched attack on all its targets in East Pakistan, supporting Indian Air Force. They struck Cox's Bazar, they struck Chittagong, they struck so many other ground targets. Unfortunately, Indian Navy lost. Pakistan Navy lost. Fortunately, Pakistan Navy lost Ghazi submarine, but Indian Navy also lost Kukri ship. I must tell you some very interesting story about Kukri. This ship was somewhere in the Bay of Bengal and it got hit and it sank. The captain, the commander or the captain of the ship was one Kamak, Captain Mullah, Kashmiri chap. He refused to abandon the ship. When ship was sinking, he said, I will go down with the ship as my men are going. He did not, he sat on a chair and went down into the water. Very brave man. So we submarine in eastern side. Now the ground operation, I told you the air and naval operation. The Indian Army went in a very big way, taking no chances at all. It went into a three-pronged attack on eastern side and supported by armor, artillery, and Indian Air Force. They followed a technique called blitzkrieg. Let me explain to you what it is. It's a concept where you go with a very heavy weapon system at a very high speed, giving no chance to the enemy to look around or to react. This was followed by the Germans in World War II when they started the war by attacking Poland. The World War II was started by attack by Germans to Poland. They went with such heavy weight of attack, hundreds of aeroplane fighters, heavy ground forces, heavy weapon system. Main thing is in this two. One is the speed and other is the load that you want to employ. It's called blitzkrieg technique. Now, why was India thinking of blitzkrieg? American 7th Fleet, which is normally based at Mediterranean, even today 7th Fleet is in Mediterranean. Americans have their forces all over the world, as you know, who set course for Bay of Bengal in support of Pakistan. Now it became a race against time as far as General Manisha was concerned or Indian armed forces concerned. We had to win the war and achieve our objective that I mentioned earlier before Seventh Fleet reaches Bay of Bengal. The Seventh Fleet was heading for in support of Pakistan. Those were the days India and America were never on good terms. So Pakistan was being supported by American Seventh Fleet, and we had to fight against time. Not many people know, ladies and gentlemen, I must tell you, it's a secret, no more secret, but it's not in public domain. When the USSR found that the Seventh Fleet is heading for Bay of Bengal, they sent out their nuclear submarine following the American Seventh Fleet. So both the superpowers got involved, or what to get involved. Seventh Fleet with all any number of ships, offensive ships, submarine, and USSR with nuclear submarine heading for Bay of Bengal. And India had to achieve its objective before Pakistan, before American Seventh Fleet reaches. So that was the objective. They went for Blitzkrieg. India was able to achieve its objective, and Dhaka fell on 15 December 71. So on the east, we achieve our objective. On the west, we had no major objective other than holding fight, and therefore, on the western side, Prime Minister declared unilateral ceasefire. So being one up, and this is what the Chinese did to us. They did unilaterally withdrawal in 62 war. Anyway, we'll come to when you come to 62 war. So on the west was unilateral ceasefire. West east we have already under control, and this was the biggest, most humiliating defeat of Pakistan, having lost half of its country and 93,000 prisoners of war. Never in the history of human conflict such heavy forces have been taken as POWs. But the tragedy took place little later, I'll come to it. The impact of this defeat was such that Pakistan did not go in for any more war against India, if you call Kargil a war. It was not a war, really speaking, but there were no engagement of troops. Here comes to pieces Jinnah's two-nation theory. Partition was carried out on Jinnah's insistence of Hindus and Muslims are two different nations. And on this basis, to a very large extent, India was divided on Jinnah's. Now, this two-nation theory, you know what happened to it. The nation broke up by itself. Kargil was not a war, really speaking. The second point, it was a similar agreement of 1972. After the war was over, Bhutto and his young daughter, then Benazir Bhutto was a young girl, 78 years old, came to Shimla. Negotiation carried on for some time, and Indian political leadership, unfortunately, gave away, like the 65 war, what the soldier got with his blood. In 65 war also I mentioned to you, we gave some very strategically important points. Here we returned 93,000 prisoners of war. Never in the history of human conflict so many prisoners of war have been returned without any quid pro quo. We got nothing back from Bhutto. Bhutto made empty promises, I'll go back and I'll sort this out. Moment he landed at Lahore on his way back after making, if I may use harsh word, fooling India or Indian leadership, he made a statement and went back on everything. He was a clever man. So was Indira Gandhi, but he outdid her. We did not get back 54 Indian POWs who are still in Pakistan. They must be pulped by now. But we returned 53,000. That was the occasion we could have easily sorted out Pakistan Kashmir problem. He pleaded with Indira Gandhi, when I go back, I'll be slaughtered. If I don't do this, if I don't get this. And somehow, Prime Minister, supported by political politicians, not politicians, bureaucrats, gave away POWs and gave away a lot of land that we had got. That very unfortunate part. Well, gentlemen, that's all I have to tell you about this war. It had its pluses and minuses. One thing good, lecture's over, but when I'm saying something, the present government, BJP government, for once associating the military with the political process, with national security is involved. You see the correspondence negotiations going on with the Chinese, the generals are involved. You see the negotiation going on with America, the army chief has gone there to enhance the relationship further. This is a positive sign. For a very unfortunate reason, Nehru was extremely apprehensive of armed forces. I'm drifting, but I thought I'll tell you all this. Because 47-48 was the period when large number of countries were becoming independent, and very large number of them were falling prey to the military and going in the hands of the dictators. So Nehru was very apprehensive. He did not want Indian military to be at any place of importance. So aim was to keep the military down as much as possible. Okay, this just by the way, I thought I'd tell you on this. But now some change is being seen with the present government. You look at the Americans, every gathering, every negotiation, every place, the generals are sitting along with the president, along with the military, along with the politicians. But the apprehension of started by Nehru continues to pervade even today, and the advantage made of this was by the bureaucrats. Okay, thank you very much. I'm drifting on this.